Don't mistake her calm for weakness. That's where her power begins. She doesn't rush to fill the silence. She doesn't speak just to be heard. While others scramble to defend, to explain, to impress, she waits not because she's unsure, but because she knows something most people haven't learned yet. Silence-eyes strategy. There is a difference between being quiet and being passive. One is rooted in fear, the other in power. She doesn't need to answer every question right away. She doesn't need to react to every insult. Her silence is hesitation. It's intention. She's not avoiding confrontation. She's choosing her moment, and when she speaks, it won't be to react. It will be to shift everything. People assume silence is weakness. They think if you don't argue, you've lost. But she's not interested in winning arguments. She's interested in understanding the terrain while others are caught up in ego battles and fast words. She's watching, listening, learning. The room always tells the truth eventually, but only if you rest still enough to notice. Silence is her pause before the storm. It's how she misunderstanding silencer assists the bait. It's how she protects your energy from the pool of unnecessary drama. She's not detached. She's discerning. There's a deep kind of wisdom that grows in silence, a knowing, a sharpness. She's learned that sometimes the most powerful move isn't speaking loud or dot, it's saying nothing until the moment is right. And sometimes the right moment never comes, so she lets it pass. There was a time when she felt she had to speak up to be respected, to jump in, to loud enough to matter. But that time is gone. She's not here to perform anymore. She knows her worth, doesn't rise or fall based on anyone else's volume. Now she lets her silence do the heavy lifting. Let others scramble to explain themselves. She's content to let truth sit there untouched while everyone else tries to decorate it. She has nothing to prove. That's the difference. When you're not busy proving yourself, you have the space to think clearly, to feel the energy of the conversation, instead of forcing it, to respond with precision instead of impulse. Silence gives her that edge dot. It's the pause that creates space for choice, for clarity, for control. She's watched people crumble under their own laws, talking too fast, revealing too much, saying what they wish they hadn't. She's seen how discomfort makes people rush. But she's learned to sit with it, to let the silence stretch. It's in those stretched moments that people show her cards, and she's always watching. She's not cold. She's calculated, but not in a way that's manipulative, just wise. There's a discipline to her silence, a restraint that says, I know how I am. I don't need to react to you. I don't need to match your chaos. I don't need to meet your volume. Just past that. It unnerves people. This kind of calm, they don't know what to do with it. They poke at it, push it, try to provoke it, but she doesn't take the bait. She's learned that the most unsettling thing you can do to someone to pull you into their storm is stay still. And silence is the stillest force of all. She's not silent because she lacks emotion. She's silent because she has mastered it. The silence between her words holds more meaning than most people's entire sentences. And when she definitely does speak, her words carry weight. Not because they're loud, but why calm isn't weakness because they've been chosen, considered, earned. The world teaches you to respond fast, defend quickly, speak constantly, but that pace burns people out. She's not interested in burnout. She's interested in longevity, peace, precision, and silence for her is the most powerful tool in the box. It doesn't just protect her, it empowers her. It gives her space to build from inside out without noise, without distraction. And maybe the most extraordinary thing about her silence is that it's not empty. It's full of knowing, full of boundaries, full of presence. She's not waiting to be asked. She's choosing when and whether tones were at all. Because silence, when you don't know who you are, isn't the absence of or. It's the proof of it. They don't see it because it's not loud. It doesn't enhance itself. It doesn't demand attention. It moves quietly beneath the surface like roots growing deeper while every world is busy admiring what's above. That's how her strength works. Not in declarations or performances, but in presence and stillness and restraint. There is a force within her that doesn't need to be seen to be real. It just is undeniable, unwavering, and unshaken by the need to prove anything. You won't find her competing for the spotlight. She doesn't need to be center stage, top-heel centered. In fact, she prefers the shadows, not because she's hiding, but because that's where she sees things most clearly. People think the loudest person in the room holds the power, but power isn't noise. Power is control. Power is knowing when to hold, when to speak, and when to stay silent. She understands this in her bones. She's been overlooked before, misunderstood. People assume she's timid, hesitant, maybe even unsure, but that's because they've only ever been taught to recognize force in its most aggressive form. They think power must push, must dominate, must impose. But she knows better. Power can pull, it can pause, it can wait, and still be absolute. There's something remarkable about someone who doesn't need to prove herself, who can sit with discomfort, endure his inner creation, and still remain rooted in her truth. That takes strength. Most people will never understand, and she doesn't need them to. Her strength was never for them. The strength in stillness, Annie. It was always for her. For the quiet battles she fights inside. For the decisions no one sees her make. For the dignity she holds. Even when everything around her invites her to let go of it, she listens more than she speaks. She observes before she reacts. And in that, she learns not just about others, but about herself, about what matters and what doesn't, about where to place her energy and what deserves none of it at all. She's spent enough time in rooms filled with noise to know that silence is where truth reveals itself, and shed trust that she trusts herself. People confuse humility with weakness. True humility requires a kind of self-awareness that arrogance can never reach. She doesn't need to be right all the time. She doesn't need to be first thought, she just needs to be real. And in that authenticity, there's a quiet force that's steady, unwavering, impossible to move. The world rushes, it shouts, it chases validation and instant reward. But she moves differently. She allows space for reflection, for healing, for change. And while others burn out trying to be seen, she fuels herself in the unseen because she knows what's built in silence often lasts far longer than what's built in applause. People may never understand the weight she carries because she doesn't wear it on her sleeve. She carries it with grace, with intention. She allows herself the full range of emotion, fear, sadness, hope, resolve, but she doesn't collapse under any of it. She holds it, processes it, transforms it all in her own time and her own way. And sometimes when she walks into a room, she doesn't say a word, but you feel her. That's the kind of force she carries. The kind that doesn't need an introduction. It lives in her presence, in her energy, in the way she looks at you. Fully present, fully aware. There's nothing performative about her power. It's real. And that's why it's rare. Not everyone will see her. Not everyone will recognize what she's become, but the right people will. The ones who understand that what's unseen isn't too important. It's sacred. It's intentional. It's the part of her that can't be manipulated or mimicked. The part of her that's earned, no gifted. And when it finally emerges, when it finally steps into the light, it will not be for attention. It will be for purpose, because that's what she is. Not decoration, not echo, but direction. She isn't trying to impress you. She's trying to stay aligned with what's true, what's lasting, what's hers. And in a world obsessed with what's visible, shoveled something far, more powerful, something quiet, steady, and unstoppable. You won't see it at first. That's the point. There's no announcement, no flash, no demand for recognition, but it's there. Tuck it beneath every decision she makes, stitched into the way she holds herself. Calm, unshaken, deliberate. Empowerment doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it moves. Invisibly, silently, threading its way through her life, transforming the way she thinks, the way she responds, the way she no longer asks for permission to exist. It's not that she's hiding. It's that she no longer needs to prove anything. There was a time when she explained herself, soft her edges, made herself smaller to make others more comfortable. She how grace becomes power rose to believe she had to. Earn her space, justify her feelings, validate her choices. That version of her wassel-ways chasing a nod of approval. A sign she was enough, but that's not who she is now. Now her strength lives in places no one thinks to look in her boundaries, and her silence in the moments shakus peace over proving a point. You might mistake her quiet for retreat. It's not. It's a choice, a powerful one. She could shout. Sure, she could fight louder, push harder, take up more space with force, but she doesn't need to. Her power isn't about overpowering. It's about knowing who she is, and more importantly, who she isn't. It's about walking away when the conversation stops serving her. It's about saying now without explanation. It's about knowing that not every invitation to engage is worth accepting. She is empowered not because she's dominant, but because she's aligned. That alignment doesn't need a spotlight. It's internal. It lives in how she speaks to herself, and how she forgives herself, and how she protects her time, her energy, her softness. She doesn't perform strength anymore. She embodies it in the way she pauses before reacting, in how she listens without needing to be right, and how she stays rooted even when the ground around her shifts. People often think empowerment has to look a certain way. Loud, bold, constantly pushing. Betrayal empowerment, it's quieter. It's softer but more enduring. It's the moment she stops apologizing for things that aren't her fault. The moment she sets a boundary and doesn't flinch when it's tested. The moment she chooses without guilt. Those are the invisible revolutions, the small rebellions that slowly rebuild her from the inside out. And here's what most people miss. Those shifts, those months, they aren't dramatic. They didn't happen all at once. They're subtle. You might not notice the first time. She leaves the room instead of defending herself, or the way she doesn't reach for validation when she's unsure, or how she smiles, not to please anyone, but because she feels something real just for herself. But they add up quietly, powerfully, and one day she realizes she doesn't need to be chosen. She already chose herself. That's the kind of empowerment that doesn't fade dot. It's not a mask she wears until it cracks under pressure. It's not an act invisible. Authority of emotion she maintains for applause. It's something she's grown into. Something she's earned by doing the hard, invisible work. Sitting with discomfort, grieving the girl she had to outgrow. Forgiving herself for the silence she once mistook for peace. She had to lose a lot to get here. Illusions, expectations, pieces of herself that were never truly hers. And know what she's. Though this different, it doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't beg to be acknowledged. It just is steady, grounded, real. That's the part no one can take from her. The kind of strength that isn't loud but lasts. The kind of clarity that doesn't demand but directs. The kind of presence that doesn't seek control because it's already whole. So now, you might not see power in her at first. You might overlook her in a room, misread her, quiet, underestimate her softness. But eventually, if you're paying attention, you'll feel it in the way she holds her gaze. In the way she doesn't chase orkling or shrink. In the way she simplifies. To disappear. That's what invisible empowerment looks like. It's not about being seen. It's about seeing herself. And finally, trusting that's new. She doesn't raise her voice, yet you feel every word. There's no armor, no show of force, no need to dominate have room, but somehow she holds it. Not by threat, not by volume, but by presence. There's a calm in her, and at the same time, something unshakable. It's not obvious at first because the world expects strength to be hard-edged, loud, fast, but hers isn't performative. It's earned quietly over time through thepplaces where grace meets grit. She's not made of glass, though she carries herself with the softness of someone who once was. She's been through things she doesn't need to talk about for you to know they happened. There's adept in her kindness, the kind that doesn't flinch. When things get hard, she knows that real compassion doesn't mean being a doormat. It means being brave enough to care even when you've been hurt before. It means staying open even when the world tells you to shut down. There's a misconception that grace means surrender, that it's passive. But for her, grace is the choice to rise without what real empowerment sounds like courage. It's the decision not to become bitter even when bitterness would be easier. She's not naive. She knows how people can be. She's seen what betrayal feels like. She's learned the hard way that not everyone values softness. But still, she chooses it. Not because she's weak, but because she refuses to let the world harden her. And grit, well, that's a different story. That's in her bones, Dot. It's in the way she gets up again and again and again. Not always quickly, not always without scars. But she rises every time, not because she has to prove anything, but because she made a quiet promise to herself that she would never stay down for long. She's had days where the weight felt unbearable, where silence pressed in, where she questioned at every. But grit doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like serving the day. Sometimes it looks like showing up messy and unsure, but still showing up. She doesn't broadcast their struggles. She doesn't need a crowd to witness her resilience. Most of what is overcome, she's done alone, in the middle of the night, in the quiet of her own mind. And that's where grit lives, not in grand gestures, but in the small invisible choices she makes every day, Dot, to keep going, to stay soft, to hold on to her sense of self when the world tries to shake it loose. There's a strength in her that doesn't need tosh out, a certainty that doesn't waver even when everything around her is uncertain. She gives people the benefit of the doubt, but she's no fool. She sees clearly. She knows how to walk away without burning bridges, how to say no without needing to explain. Her boundaries are not walls. They're fences marked with grace. If you cross them, she won't rage. She'll simply remove herself. That's her grit. She be Theon who remembers your story, who holds space when you fall apart, but she won't let you stay in your excuses. She's been through too much herself to pretend healing happens without work. She's lived the lessons. She's earned her perspective. And when she offers it final words, she rises it's not to control. It's to empower. You won't see her chasing what isn't aligned. She's done trying to force things. If it costs her peace, if it requires her to shrink, it's no longer an option. She's not afraid of starting over, not afraid of being misunderstood. She's not here to convince anyone of her worth. She already knows it. That's what grace and grit looks like. The ability to hold herself with tenderness and also with strength, to forgive but not forget, to love without losing herself. And maybe the most powerful thing about her is that she doesn't need anyone to notice what it took to become this version of herself. She's not waiting for recognition. She's living in alignment. That's her reward. She's both fire and stillness, steel and soul. She's learned that these softest parts of her were never weaknesses. They were the parts that injured, the parts that bent without breaking. This is her now, a woman who's learned to hold both grace and grit in the same breath. And that's the kind of strength that doesn't fade. It builds quietly, beautifully, unbreakably. She rose not loudly, but undeniably.